Hi everyone. I want to make a video today that I've been hoping to do for quite a while. I had told you all about the novel I wrote over many years and finally finished during the pandemic, and still go back every so often and do some editing. But I want to tell you a little bit about where that where that novel came from. First of all, it revolves around a character named Noah, who's in the story is like 17, and then also his boyfriend Rob, who is, I believe, 18 at the time when the story starts. So there's slight age difference. And they're living. This is 1985, set in 1985 in a small city in California. You would think that California is all progressive and liberal type, but it's not. And so this is somewhere, in the not category. Especially back then, it was a lot harder no matter where you lived. And if someone who was in the gay community in the late 80s, mid to late 80s, that's when I started being involved. Obviously, AIDS was a big part of the landscape at that point. Unfortunately, a lot of people died as a result of AIDS, and a lot of other people were almost purposely, in my opinion, almost purposely not understanding how it actually could be spread. And yeah, in the beginning there was a lot of questions about that, but by the mid 80s and especially the late 80s, not so much. But people stayed, as you might imagine, ignorant or believed things that weren't true and didn't believe the science. Where have we heard that recently? So yeah, it was just a different time altogether. For instance, it was perfectly normal for certain senators to get up in the U.S. Senate and say horrible things about gay people, and sort of lump us all together. So yeah, it was a really, really different time. And when I want to say also, it's a lot of times on YouTube, I'll find videos or come across videos that is a coming out story, and a lot of times they go well, and that's great. Sometimes they don't, but they're telling their story of how they came out or how they chose to come out to people around them, parents, siblings, whoever, close friends. Um, for me, that didn't happen because I was outed, basically, is what you would call it now. My mom found some books and things that I had that made it clear that I was interested in guys and therefore gay or bi, but she didn't know. I'm gay, by the way. And she was very, very religious, and so it was not a good thing. She was not happy at all. It was a bad thing. And keep in mind, at the time this was going on, I was 17, so I didn't have the freedom. I wasn't living on my own. I was living under her roof, so to speak, and lived by her rules. So she found this. She was very upset. She confronted me. We had a big, argument or whatever you want to call that, disagreement. And then she told her Bible study, and she told all our immediate family, the adults, obviously, not the little kids. At the time, I had a lot of little kids. This was in late 1984, so things were a lot different, as I said earlier. And it wasn't talked about. Being gay was not talked about much at all. There were no TV shows, there were no movies. The only thing would be soap, and that was a very soapy thing, and comedy. But I didn't even know about that at the time, and I don't know that she did. We didn't watch TV. That's another thing that I wanted to press or say is that you know being in that very religious household, there were a lot of things we didn't do, and people have asked me in previous videos sometimes when I brought this up, say a little bit more about this. So here's what I'm going to say is that we didn't watch TV, we didn't go to movies, we weren't listening to the radio, we were very sheltered. There were other things that we didn't do. We didn't celebrate most holidays. And no, she wasn't a Christian Scientist or Jehovah's Witness. So it was a different kind of religion. I don't even know what to call it. But definitely being gay was not looked at as a good thing. So when I wrote this novel later, I was coming at it from that perspective, and I just want to read you this little paragraph that this story, by the way, it's called Like Father, Like Son, Like Father, Like Son, is on the story site called Wattpad, which is Wattpad. And I hope you'll go read it because I don't think it's something that I want to read on this channel. It's a lot longer than my uh, this true story I shared late last year. I think that was early this year. Confessions of Another Place and Time. So this is a novel, but parts of it are based Noah's experience and with his mother, somewhat based on what happened with me, but certainly fictionalized. The main gist of the story about the father is not at all my experience, my father's experience. So I don't want to confuse that. That's definitely fiction. Now, there's some people in the story that were real people that I wanted to honor and put them in as like cameo characters from my life as well. Also, there's parts of my experience that I used in to help with the youth group I was involved with in the late 80s and early 90s. So Noah and his small group of friends and his boyfriend end up getting involved in that a youth group very similar. But of course, mine was here in Indiana. Theirs out there in California. So let me just read you this little intro on Wattpad to this. It says, "What was it like to be gay in the mid 80s? This story, set in 1985, is about a close knit family torn apart by the truth that comes to light. It can only mean Noah and his family's future will be determined by their choices and those of others around them. Just as the nation reacts with panic to a disease that's raging, hatred and bigotry spring up, but Noah and his boyfriend Rob and their friends are determined to fight back against it and the people who blame gay men for the deadly disease of AIDS. During a time when being gay was thought of as a sin by many, as something that needed to be punished or would send you to hell." So, that's a little bit of an intro to the story, Like Father, Like Son. It certainly doesn't talk about really the father's aspect of it, which is, I feel, so interesting in this novel. And of course, this is a novel that's close to my heart. It's the only novel I've ever written at this point. I don't know that I will write another novel. And remember, I think I said this before on another earlier video, that these two characters of Rob and Noah, this couple, are from the soap opera like story I would tell growing up, because we didn't have TV and we didn't have radio and all that and movies. And so I had to be creative and create my own stories. And when I got uh, toys, I had a set of animals. I would use those and do stories and tell my little brother stories and entertain us both, because I just like to do that. I like to use my imagination. Later, that graduated to the dolls, for the use of dolls for the stories, and moved away from the little animals, the little plastic animals. So this story, as I said, it's close to my heart. But Noah and Rob were a couple on this story. Now, in the story, they're adults. That story I used to call Life's Fullest. And it was basically a verbal soap opera. I actually have audio tapes of at least 30 episodes of this. And by the way, I'm doing all the voices. I'm playing all the parts, so to speak, because it was just internal. It's not like this was for an audience other than my brother. And he tolerated it, or he actually, I think he enjoyed it. I mean, he said he did. So, and it wasn't just that. There were a few other stories with a few other characters, like one named Hilda Magoo, who I believe was a detective. So, just using the imagination and coming up with all kinds of things. And it was fun. We had fun doing that. But back to this story and these characters. So when I wrote this, obviously you need a sort of a main character, and that's Noah, and then his family, and then, like I said, a small group of friends, and it starts out where there's already things going on in their area, and I mean, this was true back then. It's like hate crimes and a lot of bigotry. And by the way, I don't mean to say that people don't still think of being gay or LGBTQ as a sin now, because many people do. But this is a little different, because it was almost like it was sanctioned, like it was okay, and Congress, and I hope we don't ever get back to that. But it's looking, and I swear, in the last 4 to 6 years, I feel like the pendulum has swung back the wrong way. So we're not like, I want everyone to know we are not where we were back in the 80s, mid to late 80s especially. But it could get that way, and it could get just as bad because the hate has always been here, and hatefulness will always be here, I think, unfortunately. But um, it's a little different. And keep in mind that with AIDS, gay people truly, especially gay men, I mean, gay men were blamed for AIDS. Probably some still do. But now it's not socially acceptable to do that. I mean, there were people who literally in Congress, I mean, in the U.S. Congress, who wanted to send all gay men to an island somewhere and quarantine us. Well, good luck with that. I mean, I don't even know how they would know who all is a gay man, especially back then. And that brings me back to being outed by my mother, who, this isn't an anti mother story, and neither is my story. I mean, my mother loved me. She never stopped loving me. She did not disown me. So I want to make that clear. But she didn't know what she was doing. And how did that affect me? Um, I can look at it as a double edged sword, because here's what I would say is it saved me a lot of time and effort having to come out to all these many people. Suddenly, however, over whatever period of time, let's just say 2 weeks, everybody around me knew, except in school, I mean. But home life, family, and the church I had grown up in, which was a small home based church, not our home, but somebody else's. So, but it was also a bit traumatic in the fact that I didn't want them all to know. I wasn't really ready for people to know. But it was a choice that was taken away from me. So I wish she hadn't have done that, but I don't hold it against her in my memory, and I forgave her a long time ago for that. We got past it, and we had a good relationship before she passed away 5 years ago. But I just hope that people realize that that can be really hurtful to someone to be outed like that. And even way back then, I mean, I don't think the term outed was being used. I mean, words evolve, words come about, but that's basically what it was. In this story, I mean, there are different ways. The two main characters are not out to their families in the beginning. They're not even out to anyone at school, so it's a very secretive relationship, as it probably would have been back then. But they have different ways that evolves and changes over the course of the story. By the way, this story it's not like a long period of time in the story. It's, I want to say, a year at most, because they're seniors in high school. They do graduate in the story, and they go on and start their next stage in life. And there's a lot involved in that. But I mean, I'm biased, obviously. I really liked this story. I worked a lot on it. So I would invite you all to go to Wattpad and read the story. And, it's like I said, longer than that Confessions of Another Place in Time one that I shared. But I don't remember right this second sitting here how many chapters it is. But it's not really long, in my opinion. I hope that some of you will read that story. If you're interested in seeing it a different way, like possibly one chapter at a time on this channel, let me know. Put the comments below, and if there are enough people interested, I may do that. But I just wanted to share with you that Like Father, Like Son is really important to me because it touches on things I experienced. I weave in a lot of real life events, like Rock Hudson being diagnosed or coming out publicly as having AIDS and then dying not long after that. I wanted it to be very realistic, but yet be, with some truth in there like that, but still be a novel about people that don't actually exist. And yes, use some of my own experiences and how I felt about that, but make it a little different, and what happens after that. I mean, we don't want to just dwell on one part or two parts, but what happens after those things. Like once Rob and parents find out he's gay, and he, I believe, does come out to them, as I recall. It's been a while since I read it, but I'm very familiar with it. That's the way I'm remembering it. And Noah, like me, is sort of forced out a different way. Not the way I was, by the way, but another way. And, his mom does not take it well, and it doesn't go well. And, you see what has to happen after that. So, with that, I'm going to wrap up, but just say thank you for your constant support on this channel and watching, and I really appreciate that. If you like this video, like it, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't. And I will talk to you all next time. Bye.